Eleanor Harper was 63 years old when her world began to fracture. Only months earlier, she had buried her husband of nearly 4 decades, a sudden heart attack, stealing away the man who had been her anchor. Alone in the silence of a too-large house, Eleanor leaned on the only person she believed she could trust, her son, Daniel. He was her blood, her pride, the boy she had raised through every scraped knee and sleepless night. But grief can be a dangerous fog. It blinds, and Eleanor could not yet see the storm forming around her. Daniel did not come alone. By his side was Cassandra Reed, his business partner and newly announced fiancée. Young, ambitious, with a sharp mind and a smile that felt rehearsed. To the neighbors, Cassandra looked like a blessing. Sophisticated, confident, good for Daniel. But to Eleanor, there was always something in Cassandra's eyes, something calculating, as if she were already measuring the curtains in Eleanor's living room. One afternoon, returning from a family lunch, Eleanor sat quietly in the back seat of Daniel's car. Her head rested against the window, her eyelids heavy. To Daniel and Cassandra, she seemed asleep, but she wasn't, and that was when she heard it. Daniel.
Once Mom signs the papers, the house and the accounts will all be in our names. After that, the nursing home can take care of the rest.
Cassandra.
You're brilliant, Daniel. She's vulnerable, grieving. Just a few signatures, and it's done. In that moment,
Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. The betrayal was a blade, sharp and merciless. Her own son, conspiring to strip away everything she and her husband had built. That night, in the dim light of her living room, Eleanor sat before her husband's photograph. His familiar smile looked back at her, frozen in time. She whispered to him, a promise that she would not let their legacy fall into greedy hands. From then on, every smile Daniel offered, every casual question Cassandra posed, carried poison beneath the surface. Documents began to appear, routine financial updates, Daniel called them. Pages he urged her to sign. Contracts Cassandra placed neatly in front of her. But Eleanor's pen never touched the paper. She noticed how Daniel locked drawers that used to be hers. How Cassandra answered calls meant for her. Her home, her life, was slipping through her fingers. And so Eleanor made a decision. If her son and his fiancée were playing a game, then she would learn the rules and beat them at it. She began to collect evidence. Receipts, invoices, unexplained withdrawals, each tucked carefully into an old recipe box. A small tape recorder hidden in her cardigan pocket captured whispers in hallways, mutters over the phone. Every night, she locked the box in her wardrobe, as if it were a vault. And with each piece of proof, her fear began to change shape. It became something stronger. Resolve. Eleanor Harper was no longer just a grieving widow. She was a mother betrayed. And she was preparing to fight back. In the weeks that followed, the walls of Eleanor Harper's home began to feel less like protection and more like a cage. Daniel tightened his grip with the precision of a man who believed victory was inevitable. Cassandra, always at his side, moved through the house as though it already belonged to her. Daniel told his mother it was for her safety, that locking certain drawers, taking over the household bills, was simply efficiency. But Eleanor saw what was happening. Piece by piece, her independence was being dismantled. Her checkbook vanished from the desk. The deed to the house gone from its folder. Even the family heirlooms, the silverware set Richard's parents had given them, were suddenly locked away. Eleanor was becoming a guest in her own home. And then came the visitors. Bankers, lawyers, men in suits who spoke in careful, clipped phrases. Daniel introduced them as advisors. Cassandra smiled sweetly, pouring coffee, sliding papers across the table. Daniel.
Mom, it's just a formality. Sign here, and everything stays secure. It's what Dad would have wanted.
But Eleanor's pen never touched the page. Her hand hovered, her lips pressed tight. She would not surrender. Late at night, when the house grew still, Eleanor would replay the whispers she had captured. Daniel's impatience, Cassandra's scheming laughter. Each tape added weight to her collection of truth. In her bedroom wardrobe, the old recipe box grew heavier with folded receipts, copied statements, even photographs she took with trembling hands. Evidence. Enough, she prayed, to reveal the plot for what it was. Elder financial abuse. But the cost of resistance was steep. Daniel grew sharper, his words laced with frustration. Cassandra's mask of politeness began to crack, her smiles vanishing the moment Eleanor turned away. Cassandra.
She's stalling, Daniel. We can't wait forever.
Daniel. Thea.
Dear, don't worry. She'll cave. She has no choice.
What they didn't know, what they couldn't imagine, was that Eleanor was preparing for war. One evening, Eleanor sat before her vanity mirror. The house was silent. Her reflection looked back at her, silver hair falling around a face carved with grief and exhaustion. And in that moment, she understood. Daniel and Cassandra wanted to strip her of dignity, power, identity. So she made a choice. If they wished to take everything, then she would decide what to give. Her trembling hands reached for the electric clippers Daniel had left in the bathroom. She plugged them in. The buzz filled the room, and slowly, deliberately, Eleanor began to shave her head. Locks of silver hair drifted down onto the vanity, onto her lap, onto the floor like fallen leaves. Each strand was a declaration. Each pass of the clippers was a vow. She would not be caged. She would not be erased. By the time she finished, her scalp shone bare beneath the lamplight. Her reflection stared back, stripped. This was not defeat. It was transformation. That night, Eleanor lay in bed, her head against the pillow, light as air. She had lost her hair, yes, but in that loss, she had found something Daniel and Cassandra could never touch. Courage. The trap was tightening, but Eleanor Harper was no longer a prisoner. She was ready to fight. By the time the first strands of Eleanor Harper's hair began to grow back, her plan was complete. The recipe box, once light as flour, was now heavy with evidence. Tape recordings, receipts, copies of legal documents Daniel had tried to slip beneath her pen. Eleanor was no longer a victim, waiting in silence. She was the keeper of a truth, sharp enough to cut through every lie. But still, she lived among her enemies. Every morning, Daniel's voice echoed through the kitchen calm, commanding. Every evening, Cassandra's heels clicked across the hardwood floors as she issued quiet instructions to contractors, decorators, planners who already spoke as if the house were theirs. Eleanor watched. She listened. She endured. And she waited for her moment. It came one Sunday afternoon. Daniel had pressed another contract before her. Cassandra hovered, arms folded, impatience flickering in her eyes. Daniel.
Mom, enough games. You've dragged this out long enough. Just sign it and everything will be simple.
Cassandra.
He's right. Do you really want to keep living in this big old house alone? You belong in a facility where people can take care of you properly.
For the first time, Eleanor lifted her gaze. Not meek, not fearful. Her scalp, still bare beneath the overhead light, gleamed like a crown. Eleanor.
No, I don't belong in a facility. I belong here. And you don't belong in my life.
Daniel blinked, stunned. Cassandra's smile faltered. But before either could recover, Eleanor pushed the contract back across the table. The next morning, Eleanor walked into the office of a local attorney. Her recipe box clutched against her chest, as if it were armor. She placed it on the desk, lifted the lid, and began to reveal the truth. The recordings, the forged drafts, the bank statements showing unexplained transfers. Lawyer.
Mrs. Harper, this is not just coercion. This is criminal.
From the lawyer's office, she was guided to the police station. Detectives leaned in, headphones pressed tight, as Daniel's whispered betrayal filled their ears. Every tape, every receipt, every careful note. Eleanor had built a case stronger than her son ever imagined. Investigators opened a file. They stamped dates, logged exhibits, began their own watch on Daniel Harper and Cassandra Reed. For the first time in months, Eleanor felt the weight shift. But justice is not swift. And in the days that followed, Daniel grew restless. He noticed the defiance in his mother's eyes. He saw the quiet strength in her shoulders. And though he could not prove it, he began to sense the truth. Eleanor was no longer under his control. Daniel.
What are you hiding, Mom?
She answered with silence. Because silence, now, was power. The case was moving forward, and soon, the betrayal that began in whispers would be dragged into the open before lawyers, judges, and strangers who would hear the story of a son who tried to erase his mother, and a mother who refused to vanish. Eleanor Harper had broken the silence, and there was no turning back. By the time the case reached court, the whispers had become headlines. Son and fiancé accused of elder exploitation. Neighbors who once admired Daniel's confidence now whispered another word, predator. And at the center of it all stood Eleanor Harper, head shaved, posture tall, eyes unflinching. The courtroom was crowded. Reporters scribbled notes. Cameras clicked like restless insects. Daniel sat stiffly in his suit, his charm curdling into arrogance. Cassandra, ever calculating, crossed her legs with practiced elegance, but her eyes darted nervously. The prosecutor pressed play. From the speakers came Daniel's own voice, sharp and cold. Daniel, and
Once Mom signs the papers, the house and the accounts will be ours. After that, the nursing home can take care of the rest.
Then Cassandra's laughter followed, cruel and unmistakable. The evidence was undeniable. Receipt after receipt, statement after statement, recording after recording. Cassandra tried to defend herself, claiming she was manipulated. that Daniel orchestrated it all. But the jury heard her voice, her words, her complicity. Daniel, cornered, tried to appeal to the crowd. Daniel,
She's my mother. I was protecting her.
but the truth had already spoken. The verdict came swift. Cassandra Reed, guilty of financial exploitation, conspiracy, fraud, sentenced to prison. Daniel Harper spared prison but stripped of credibility, inheritance, and the respect of a community that once admired him. To the world, he was no longer a devoted son. He was the man who tried to erase his own mother. And Eleanor, she walked out of that courthouse into the crisp autumn air. Her head, bare beneath the fading sun, shone like a beacon, not a mark of shame. She had given up her hair, yes, but in doing so, she had reclaimed her voice. In interviews that followed, Eleanor spoke with clarity. Eleanor,
No one should ever feel powerless because of age or grief. If they try to strip you of dignity, take it into your own hands. They can't steal your courage.
months passed. Her hair began to grow back soft, silver, resilient, a mirror of her spirit. The house remained hers, the account secured, the legacy of Richard Harper, her late husband, protected. But more than property or money, Eleanor had won something greater. She had proven that even when betrayed by blood, a woman could rise. Eleanor Harper's story is not just one of deception. It is one of defiance. A reminder that strength can be found in the quietest of hearts. And that sometimes, the act of shaving away what others might use against you can become the most powerful crown of all.